All right, kids. It is. What's this? What's this? It's, what is it? 7:10. 7:10 p.m. Friday night. So no work tomorrow, which is freaking awesome. There's a lot of stuff going on around here. We've got Andrew Castor's shows this weekend. Meeting Jason in the morning. We're going to go train to check out another gym that we haven't been to yet. And we'll take you guys along, as it were. And, I don't know, a bunch of shit going on. And you know what happens on Sundays at Retro, and everybody will be there this go-around. Even Richard's back.
No, Richard said he sent me a text.
Richard's not going to make it Sunday?
He's going to try, but he thinks he has to work.
He's got to work again. And Richard, his work schedule's been screwed up lately. So I saw him the other night, but that's why we haven't seen him lately on Sundays. But he'll catch back up with us as soon as, you know, people got to work. It's the reality of the situation. You know how it is. This is just a hobby. It's got to go around the work schedule. Anyway, I just want to throw something out there really quick. I want to talk about Lee Priest and how I know Lee Priest and what, how I met him and what my experience was with Lee Priest one-on-one, so to say. The only pro show I ever did, I looked like pure garbage. I looked horrible. I looked better the very first show I ever did as an amateur. It's not like I did a ton of shows. I didn't do a ton of shows. I moved through a few shows very quickly, and you know, I was enormous, and I did, I mean, first show I did, I weighed 233. First show I ever did. At the last show I was 252. But I looked like total shit. But I looked awesome the show before that. So, you know, you try things, you get nervous at the end, you try some kind of voodoo shit that everybody says you gotta do, and you're better off sometimes. That's why I keep telling you guys, you're better off sticking with what works for you. You find something that works for you, that's what you stick with, man. Don't mess with it. If it ain't broke, don't break it. But Lee Priest. Now, what happened was, at the show, there was a huge area in the back of the theater. It was in a theater in New York, Times Square, in that theater district right there. And it was a beautiful venue, beautiful, gorgeous. But backstage, which is kind of under the stage, but not really. But anyway, there was a long, wide, like, hall there. You know, it's a really old theater. And there's pockets and areas and spaces where people can get. But it was a madhouse back there. There were people coming back, taking pictures. There were people coming back, talking to different, you know, competitors. There were all the competitors. There were whoever the competitor had with them to help them out with whatever they were doing. And everybody's carrying their crap with them, whatever kind of shit they got to carry around. And it was kind of crowded. It wasn't a ton of room back there. So now Lee Priest, he had a different little spot. He was like back, all the way in the back, out of the way, and he had in a like a dressing room area with a curtain. He had that whole spot to himself. So, and he was the star of the show, so by far. So he deserved it. But he's fucking Lee Priest, for God's sake. So I had my buddy Ray with me, who is you know, the certified, verified, authenticated, you know, real MF. And I had my buddy with me, and we were looking for space. We didn't really have space. It was kind of crowded. I don't really like crowds. So, you know, he says, what about over there? Who's in there? So we go over, and the curtain is a little bit, you know, adrift. So you can see in there, it's Lee, and I don't know if that was Sam. I'm assuming it was Sam, but I'm not sure. Years ago, this is quite a ways back, over a decade or a decade ago maybe, and Sam was in there, you know, helping him get ready or whatever, and you know, we stuck our heads in there and said, hey Lee, you got room for 2 more guys in here? And he said, yeah mate, come on in. So Lee Priest invited us in his space, so we went in, and you know, there were a couple chairs in there. We sat down, and let me tell you, I was sitting probably from here to this camera from Lee Priest. And Lee Priest was in, I mean, spot on diamond condition. Diamond condition. Between you guys and me, to tell you the honest to God's truth, there was nobody on that Olympia stage this past Olympia that could have fucked with Lee Priest. I mean, you know, and there's a lot of favoritism and all this in politics and every other thing, right? But if you really want to be real, as far as aesthetics and conditioning both, and both of them nailed, you know, on spot on, Lee Priest had that. And now, that's the only time I was ever that close to him. That show, he had that. I mean, maybe he had it all the time. He looked awesome, you know, pictures and everything else I've seen of him, right? But it's a whole different ballgame face-to-face and like this close. It's totally different. It's different when you guys see me on here, what I look like on here, what Jason looks like on here. In real life, when you can see 3 dimensions, you know, things are much more lumpier and pronounced, and it's a whole different deal. It's a whole different deal. Which if any of you guys come into the Arnold, coming up at the expo, you'll see everybody. We'll all meet each other. I'll meet you guys. And you can tell me, you can see for yourself. It's a whole different game than this shit on this camera. But, because it's so flat, you know, and 2-dimensional on this camera. But anyway, I was sitting there talking to Lee, and he's leaning against like a dressing room counter area with a mirror, and he's like leaning against it. I don't know, stretching the calf out or whatever he's doing. I don't even remember what he's doing. Maybe Sam's putting something on his back, you know, touching up spots on his back or whatever. And sitting there, I was like in awe of the condition of this human being. He looked like, I'll tell you something, you maybe don't hear so much about how awesome his hamstring development was, and maybe is still, or would be if you wanted to be. But his hamstrings were the craziest things I've ever seen in my life up close. Now, the rest of the body matched. But those hamstrings, because he was turned around like that, that friggin' I'm no stranger to awesome hamstrings, okay? I have a pretty good set of hamstrings myself, and in the past, in good condition, my hamstrings are pretty monsters. His hamstrings, you could have stuck your fingers like this far between the separations in his hamstrings. The shit was incredible, just freaky as could be. But I've never seen anybody, and I've met a lot of people, I've never seen anybody look like that. You couldn't find a flaw. Flawless. Just incredible physique. Didn't even look like he was made out of flesh. Everybody else still looked like they were made out of flesh. They look freaky, but they still look, it looks like skin, blood and skin and veins, you know, muscle. Not him. He looked like a hard plastic action figure. That's what he looked like. I've never seen anything like it in real life before or since. Incredible, crazy looking. But he was such an awesome guy. Like in real life, he didn't have that, any cockiness or arrogance or nothing like that. As a matter of fact, he was very reflective, and he was saying, I think Sammy's got me, mate. He might have me. Talking about Sammy El-Haddad, Sammy the blacksmith. And Sammy looked awesome, but Sammy was, at that time, Sammy wasn't in the same league as Lee. None of us were, but Sammy wasn't either. You know, I mean, Sammy was way up here and I was way down here in condition on that day for sure. But Sammy wasn't in, there was that much of a gap between Sammy, who was ahead of the rest of us, and Lee. And, you know, Ray and I are telling Lee, nah, I mean, you know, there's you and there's everybody else, and that includes Sammy. I mean, Sammy looks great, but he's not there yet. And Lee was like, oh, I don't know. He looks really good. He looks really good. You know, he was like very humble, extremely humble guy. You know, if you've never known him or met him or talked to him, you know, shared a moment with him where he was allowed himself to be semi-vulnerable or was vulnerable or just truly being himself, that you could really get a glimpse. You might assume that he's probably a cocky guy, like very, you know, overconfident type of guy, but not at all. Not at all. Very mellow, reflective, very extremely humble guy. Very humble guy. You know, so I can't even remember any of the rest of the conversation. I mean, we shot the shit with him a bit, you know, just regular guys sitting there and talking, you know, whatever we might have mentioned or said, but I walked away with a lot of respect for that guy, and how kind he was to even allow us, you know, to come into his space like that. I mean, he was, you know, clearly he was, you know, getting ready to go out and go on stage and do his thing. and everybody was watching, the whole world's watching, and he still was totally fine, and had his own little area, his own little piece, and he invited us in there, and no problems at all. Just a very good guy, very friendly guy, genuine guy. Nothing phony or fake about this dude at all. So that's why, when Lee talks about the amounts of gear that he's used, and people don't believe it because it seems to be diminutive compared to what he looks like, they're assuming it should be a ton more. It's I believe he's probably telling you God's honest truth. I don't, I mean, he's been doing it so long. I mean, I remember having Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, right? You know what that was? Way back when, before I even started to actually lift at all. And Lee Priest was in a lot of that as a kid, with Arnold demonstrating different exercises with Lee. So Lee Priest's bodybuilding was, he was nursed on bodybuilding basically. So that guy is, in my opinion, he's in a different set of circumstances and a different category than everybody else. I mean, and in today's world today, even if Lee, we're all getting old, but even if Lee were allowed to come back and the IFBB wasn't all this political horseshit, which I don't even know if he would give two shits about it, but if he were to come back, that would be another thing like this Kevin Levrone thing, where everybody wants to see it. People are hungry for that reality, that real, the character of some of these guys that just came across in their presentation, and their work ethic. I mean, the training videos that these guys had, they're just charismatic, really, is what carries it. They're just so charismatic with just incredible world-class physiques, the best in the world. So, it would be just too much to ever imagine that they would let him come back to compete or invite him to, and who knows if he would even want to do it at this stage of the game. But if he did, man, now that would sell some tickets and fill some seats. So powers that be, if it ever gets back to them, any of this shit, they don't give two shits about me or anybody else, or none of you or anything else, to tell you the God's honest truth. But two shits about bodybuilding. It's just a means to the end, you know what I mean? It's just the dollars, that's all it is, and just a power trip. But, I mean, you figure you got all these huge monsters, and none of them going to say boo to these guys. They talk to them like dogs half the time. They're not going to say shit because their whole career's riding on what this fucking guy could do, just with a snap of his finger. Me, I was one of those guys that I never really gave a fuck. I treat people how they treat me. If they're respectful, and they're kind, and they're gentle, and they're, gentlemen, polite, right? Then I'm all that, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity to be allowed to be that and share that, space. But in that position. But if they're going to talk to you, down to you, and treat you like dirt, fuck them, man. Because without you guys, you that are considering competing or do compete, there's no show. There's no business. There's no nothing. Nothing. So any of you guys thinking about competing, I mean, if you're flying out somewhere on your dime, you've paid for all your prep and your food and you've put in the work. Time is money, you've put in the work. So it's just, you can't even actually put a dollar sign, an amount on it, right? Really. But we do it as a passion, basically. Most of us, the best of us, I believe, do it as a passion. Like I said, it's a hobby, And but if you're going to put all that in, you're going to go compete, you're going to carry that to that show. Without you, there's no show. Without guys like you, without you guys, there's no show. There's no business. There's no dollars. There's no revenue coming in. So, never let these fucks talk down to you and shit. I mean, there are a lot of good people out there, too, doing it for the right reasons. There are a lot of good administrators and facilitators and, people putting on these shows and shit. There's a lot of good people out there, but you know what? There are some fucking shitbags out there, too. But we're trying to keep it positive here. So, we're not going to talk about the rat bastards. We're only going to talk about the good people. Believe me, I could name some rat bastards. And it ain't that I'm fucking scared to name them, because what are they going to do? They're not going to do any fucking thing. But they're out there. Lots of them. But there are some really good people, and that's who we're going to talk about. So this is the first one, Lee Priest. Fucking dynamite guy, awesome guy, real guy. I love him. I think he's great. I think he can do no wrong. And we'll talk about another one coming up soon. All right, I'll catch you guys later. A lot to do tomorrow. Shoot a lot of video this weekend. Should be some really good stuff. We'll see. I'll try. You know what I mean? You guys can be the judge. Have an awesome evening.